All right. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Roll on the Table podcast, um, which the name will probably change randomly throughout the night, depending on the strange topics we decide to discuss. Um, uh, for those of you that may not be familiar, this is a just kind of a roundtable podcast. We discuss stuff related to the tabletop RPG community. Um, and normally we have as many different viewpoints as I can. We normally have someone that is primarily a DM, which you hear from all the time. It seems that most podcasts, YouTube shows, really anywhere you go for advice on tabletop RPGs, it's almost exclusively the DMs to talking. We also normally have a person who's primarily a player to give the player perspective on things, and then another person just because I like four better than the three that we call our wild table or a wild card chair. This week we had a slight issue. Hold, please. Nope. I was hoping something might have been resolved. We are missing one of our cast members, unfortunately. So instead of four, you will only have the three. But we still should have some interesting conversations. If any of you know any of my guests, I have had many interesting conversations with both of them about completely mundane topics. So tonight should be very interesting. To get things started, let's go ahead and introduce my guest tonight. First, sitting in our the DM chair, which doesn't really matter because both of these guys are pretty experienced DMs. But I specifically designated the DM, and that is Alex.
Oh, that's me. Oh, wow.
Well, you were the first person to say yes. So.
Okay. That may have been a mistake for the record, but hi, my name is Alex Rosenberg. I'm known on the internet as Luca_Starks. I'm the media director of Zelda Universe, and I have been doing tabletop stuff for, 6 years? Something like that. I started in 2014, basically from watching Acquisitions Incorporated when, like, far enough back when before PAX West became PAX West, when it was known as PAX Prime, when Will Wheaton was still part of that group. This was after he got revived, and then when they were in that like temple thing.
Great
episode. Oh, it's great. Where someone in the audience was like, "Watch out for acid pits," and Will Wheaton just flipped them off, and it was wonderful. But they were playing D&D next, and I didn't know what that was, and then I looked it up, and then it turned out to be 5th edition. And I think I actively started playing it in 2015. Like, I started learning it more in 2015, and then I taught my entire friend group how to play. Like, we all just played it together, and I was the DM, and I started learning from there. And I've been playing on and off ever since. I actually just was a player for one of the people in that first group who just started DMing Saturday, which was very fun. I also am a player for Realms of the Wild, which Jody hosts over at Zelda Universe TV. I play a bird named Pierre that everyone in chat loves to taunt and wants to kill for some reason.
He plays these in Snacrifice.
Yeah, and still don't know how I feel about that.
My other guest, who is sitting in the wild cards seat, because that describes him adequately well.
This really describes all of us. Let's be clear.
The illustrious Zombie Joe, who has promised not to bite anyone and to spread these as a zombie plague.
Well, let's consider what we're dealing with today. The zombie plague actually would be a blessing compared to what we're dealing with today.
I mean, I was a zombie on TV once. Does that count?
It does count, strangely
Sweet,
enough.
I'm in.
But so yeah, I'm gonna make everybody feel really young then. So I started playing back when Stranger Things was a documentary. So I've been playing for 40 years.
Was
So
that Monsters and Mazes?
that was actually during my off time. So the only time between when I was about 10 years old and now that I wasn't playing D&D was ironically high school, because I went to school full time, I worked full time, and I took and I competed in taekwondo tournaments. So not a lot of time for D&D. I still got all the books and stuff, and I still read them, but I couldn't play with my friends as much. But I made it up to them by making them module authors for GameholeCon. So, yeah, I do currently. I am a convention organizer. I organize for GameholeCon, which is I've got a hat on, and we run the largest of the AL halls in the convention circuit. I was just telling Jody before we came on here, 100 consecutive tables is what we ran last year. We still have high hopes that we'll be running this year. We'll probably be the same amount of space, but a few less tables. But we're hoping to run this year. It takes place in November, so we'll see. I also run for Hero Camp, which is our spring training camp, which was supposed to have happened this past weekend, and did not, obviously. And Gary Con and a bunch of other regional cons, Nexus, things like that. I author for Border Kingdoms, which is this special little sandbox we have in the GameholeCon circuit to write our CCC, otherwise known as convention or community created content. And so we just had some big stuff come out for that, and we've got a bunch of modules for them from this past year coming up. Well, as soon as I get off here and I can upload them. So
Cool. And as always, I'm Trainer Jody. I run 2 campaigns currently. I have my custom campaign. I run Wednesday nights here, like every other Wednesday, and every other Saturday I run Realms of the Wild over on the Zelda Universe Twitch channel. With that, I do want to mention, if you were in the audience and were watching us, as much as we are discussing things here, I have chat open. I welcome my other panelists to have it open as well. If you,
I already do.
If you bring up any interesting ideas or anything, I'll insert them into the conversation here, so we can all kind of have discussions about this. However, before we get to the actual discussions, we have a segment I like to call "What Are You Playing?", where we just tell some interesting stories or to talk about things that we found interesting recently from our own lives or our own tables or friends' tables that, told us this story. So does anyone have anything interesting that could come up at your own tables or your own interests?
So I do kind of have a really, really dumb story that I've told certain people, but not everybody. I just did the D&D group I just did stuff with on Saturday, where I rolled 3 natural ones in a row. I had a really dumb story from like September. Do you mind if I say it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I got to preface this real quick. So the group of friends that I hang out with at from home, they're the type of group where it's like they try to meme out as all hell, because that's what they are. They like memes. Like my girlfriend's fam, when I run the games for them, they're very serious with it. They're like Lord of the Rings. My friend from home, Monty Python, if you've seen that meme. So, baseline of the story is because it's like slightly modified Phandelver a little bit. They're in a tavern. Someone's like, "Hey, go to this cave, grab a amulet for me." Cool. They get the thing. They come back to the town. Everything's in flames. Say the guy that they help turns out to the sage, gives the amulet, says, "Hey, beware the seven," dies, and then ends the chapter. Then the next session, they go and do the thing. So my friends decided to play a crab because I was homebrewing a little, a dwarf, and a Goliath. It's like the first thing they do, the dwarf spends all his money on mead. As they try to leave the inn, they try to literally like barrel through the door, like either Bethesda walk or like Looney Tunes walk through. So their greatest, so like 5 minutes in, their greatest foe is a door because they can't roll well,
which is common.
Critical roll, yeah,
which is hilarious, always fun. They then go into the forest, leading up to the Kragmaw hideout in Phandelver. One of them, I believe it's the Goliath, comes out across the tree and he's like, "Oh, I want to be inspired by the trees." I'm like, "Okay, nature check, nat 20." So it inspires him so much that he writes a poem, basically, for a lost child that is never explained. But he does not do well on the roll to get hit. That doesn't get hit by the snare that everyone else misses. They get to the river, right where the Kragmaw hideout is. One of them decides to pole vault with the dwarf, pole vault over with his greatsword that's twice the height, and then land, and then dabbed so hard that the 2 goblins that were in the little thicket just run. And I'm like, okay, sure. 2 nat 20s in a row. And then the Goliath tries to intimidate the river. That's what he said he wanted to do, and then he also got a nat 20.
You realize you're allowed to tell them no, right?
No, but when it's a nat 20, it's just like, I can't say no to a nat 20.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can.
I also, yes, ended it. The one thing, there's way more shit I can go on to on this. But the really crazy part is everything happens. They get to the end. The sage is like, "Here, take the amulet, do the thing, door the 7." And my friends are just like, "Nah, you keep it." Gives it back, walks out of town, and I'm just like, okay. Okay. It's just, which is easily one of the dumbest stories I think I have from D&D with my friends. But that same group got together for my friend to run D&D this weekend, and it was quite funny. I don't think any of them realized that they were going through basically what I had run them through before. So that's fun.
Always fun.
I don't know if mine is necessarily a stupid story, but so a while back, I decided in the local AL community here in Madison, Wisconsin, we've got a pretty significant number of female to male players, as well as
awesome.
DMs. And so I decided that at one of our Saturday events, we're going to run a special table, and we we're going to call it Flight of the Valkyrie. And it was just, I was going to run a same mod as I was running for everybody else, but it was going to be staffed with just all of our female players that wanted to sit down and play. And so that easily became the most blue table I've ever run, ever. I blame one of my particular players because I think this was within the first couple months of her coming back from maternity leave, basically. And I'm like going, it's always the quiet ones. And Lindsay's like, "I'm not quiet." And I'm like, "That's right. I don't know what's going on now." But and she's kind of the common denominator between these two stories because within, I don't know, sometime this past year, for 20 sides to every story on Twitch, I started running a Tuesday game. And I decided to kind of reinvent that same thing because that was one of the comments that we had received, that there was a few female players on our stream, but not a lot. And so I decided I was going to go do the same thing. Just boom. Just position it with all female players. And so I got 3 locals and then one person from Seattle who was a friend of one of our locals. threw them all into a show, and called it Flight of the Valkyrie because nobody else came up with a better name. I'm like, all right, we'll call it that for now, and we'll change it once we organically come up with a name. And so we start playing, and I'm running them through a campaign I created in 4th edition, which was a Nexus campaign where they show up in this kind of protected bubble of a city where the protective bubble is going away, and they have to figure out what caused this protective bubble to pop into place for several generations of humans that live there. And they find out it was a zombie apocalypse. And so we're playing through it, and one of the players back in 4th edition had said, oh geez, if it had been any other type of campaign, this character would be great. He was wrong. And then one of the other players said, what part of Zombie Joe is running a campaign did you not understand? But so I started running them basically through a 5th edition revamp of this. And so I had a pixie, a winged elf, an eladrin, and a dwarf. All of them were female characters as well as players, and the dwarf barbarian was a baker and a cook. So what of course do they decide to spend like the first couple sessions on? Talking about food in this world and how they can get cheese and making bread, and they decide to basically start making pizza. So they start creating a pizza place franchise, and so it then wound up becoming dubbed as Three Fae, a Dwarf, and a Pizza Place.
That's amazing.
And so,
Nathan Fillion to guest star in season 2, and
Ryan Reynolds or something. Yeah, we
John
start.
Krasinski shows up in the finale. It's great.
Yeah, we were sitting there. We were for the first few sessions after we started doing that. I started opening it up with, welcome to Three Fae, a Dwarf, and the Pizza Place. Please don't sue us, Deadpool.
That should be the show name.
Yeah,
right?
Three Fae, a Dwarf. I meant the first part, but yeah, that works too. That is an amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You guys have a much cooler
That should be a front for the adventure, to be honest. Like for their adventuring stuff. Gives them the money so they can go fight things.
Everything is always about, well, the pizza place is about to close, but if we go on this adventure,
we'll have money.
We'll have money. Or they have to go find tomatoes to make the sauce.
We're out of tomatoes, and the cow has stopped producing cheese.
When you're in a zombie apocalypse, that's a legitimate adventure right there.
Yep.
As far as me, I actually haven't played a session just due to how calendars lined up in a couple weeks. So I've been just looking at the various RPGs that I've been collecting, either through humble books bundles, which are amazing and wonderful.
I think I haven't heard her playing on that. I could actually throw you.
A bunch of publishers have been giving away core books for free. Like I think White Wolf gave away core books for 5 of their major campaigns. They had a vampire one that was set in medieval times that I can't remember it. They had the Changeling. They had Mage the Ascension. I got all of them, and I've been reading through all these different rule sets, and I am a bit obsessed with the Cypher system, specifically the Strange setting, because it's bonkers cool. It's this idea where you can actually travel to all these different worlds and different settings, and every time you do things change. Like you might come out as a different species, or and the laws of physics change. So you can have one session where you're fighting this high fantasy war, and the next setting you're in a spaceship fighting aliens, and then in another one you have to fight off Cthulhu cultists, and it's a cool setting that I already have a brilliant idea for a campaign setting it that I just have to find players and time to run it. So anyway, with that, we really should get into the actual topics we're going to be discussing today. We separate the topics. We generally cover the three topics. We separate them into the three categories. As much as I understand the argument that there are tons of different systems out there, and you can find an RPG system for literally any interests you can have. When we talk about what people are playing, numbers wise, you basically have the D&D and everything else. D&D makes up D&D and the offshoots of it, like Pathfinder, make up the majority of games being played. So our first topic is going to be specifically about D&D. And because last month's Unearthed Arcana reintroduced the idea of psionics with a different kind of a different approach to adding psionics to 5th edition, I figured we could talk about just overall the idea of psionics and how it fits into D&D. For anyone not aware, psionics are basically psychic powers. They were introduced, Joe might be able to correct me on this, I believe it was 2nd edition.
Yeah, I believe 2nd edition.
Because
it the first time.
She showed up with the Dark Sun, which started in 2nd.
Yep.
And it's been contentious over the years, because depending on the edition that it was in, sometimes it felt like it was just magic but by another name. Other times it might feel overpowered or underpowered, or just kind of weird, where it doesn't feel like it fits into, maybe the Forgotten Realms high fantasy to the dark fantasy feeling. So I've heard arguments for and against it tons and tons of times. So I'm interested in hearing what you guys think. So psionics in general, or the new psionics stuff. What do you guys think?
So I wasn't aware that psionics were even a thing until literally the email you said yesterday in Twitter, being like, "Hey, this is our topics," and I'm like, "Oh, did not know psionics were in D&D 5th edition," and now I know why. So I don't really look at the I don't really look at the Arcana, Unearthed Arcana as often as I probably should. But it looks interesting. So it's kind of like, I'm getting like Loki Carrie vibes.
Yeah, I mean,
is that accurate?
When you look at what they introduced,
Okay.
in Unearthed Arcana, I've actually done two videos on it so far on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/TrainerJody.
Hey.
Branding.
Yes.
Always be branding.
Originally, they were going to introduce the psionics as a psionic class, the mystic, and that was, it had to be at least 2 years ago now, maybe the 3.
Closer to 3, because I believe it was in season 4 of AL when Mike Merles was allowing that as a cert at one of his tables.
Oh yeah.
To play the mystic.
So anyway, they created this mystic class, which was really overpowered, to be blunt, and was really kind of awkward to play. It didn't really fit anywhere. It did a lot of things that other classes did, but it did them better. It was just awkward. So this new thing is they got rid of the class itself, and now they're focusing on subclasses. And I don't know, there's some really cool things with it, and then there's some really, I don't want to say bad, but interesting aspects to it. And yes, some of it kind of gives you that kind of carry vibe of throwing things with your mind. Others just feel almost like they're like some of the rogue abilities almost felt like kind of high mystical, almost like Eastern mythology monk skills, where you can create darts out of psychic energy and throw them and things like that. So
I mean, not gonna lie, I'm about it.
yeah, I'm not saying I didn't like it.
Well, and if you look at the Psychic Knight feature, it has a very kind of almost Jedi-like vibe to it. You've got the telekinetic jump, you've got telekinetic strikes. It kind of if you wanted to play a Jedi and you're playing 5th edition, you could play this Psionic Knight and get yourself a sun sword and go to town and go every time you
that'll
attack.
come back later probably in this show.
Yeah, maybe.
I hadn't made that connection, but you are 100% right.
Hey.
Yeah.
And when you really think about it, like, Jedi are basically psychic fighters.
Yeah.
And they use a good
that is correct.
And force powers, let's be honest, are just, the psychic. One of the arguments I've heard from a few of my friends is that you're adding your sci-fi to my fantasy, that it doesn't fit a lot of these settings. Like the official setting for 5th edition is Forgotten Realms, which depending on which region you're in, is generally considered either high fantasy or dark fantasy. And Dragonlance, Greyhawk, Mystara, the settings for 5th edition D&D tend to really heavily emphasize fantasy in general, with Eberron being the first one that really started to shift into that more kind of steampunk.
Actually, that probably be more Ravenloft, because Ravenloft was a Gothic setting. And so it had aspects to gaming that hadn't been introduced before, in the technology that was available, the dress that was used, the societal features, and the fact that it was Gothic, which it still is. It's a genre, a romance genre, not actually horror, not actually fantasy. It's a romance genre that was been used for decades. Well, many decades.
Along that line, do you guys feel that adding psychic powers, ostensibly, kind of adds some weird aspects to any of the settings, whether it's your fantasy settings, whether it's Ravenloft with this kind of Gothic romance, or anything like that?
Well, I mean, if you look at well, you're getting your sci-fi in my fantasy. By that same token, then why would we play something like Shadowrun, where you're putting your fantasy into their sci-fi, or Deadlands? Deadlands is a mashup. Weird West, the entire subgenre of the literature, is literally a mashup of different genres and putting them together. And that kind
of brings up the idea, like, again, you don't hear people complaining in Shadowrun because already I'm a mashup, or Deadlands. Do you think like the D&D community specifically is a little bit more against? Because again, I've seen this argument online constantly whenever a new psionic option was released in Unearthed Arcana. People would get really upset about this. And I even have a friend of mine that's gone as far to say monks don't belong in D&D because they're not a fantasy thing. They're very Middle Eastern kind of mysticism slash mythology. They're very much rooted in kind of Chinese folklore and the things like that, which is very different from the European medieval setting of most fantasy things.
Here's the thing. I feel like that doesn't matter. Because, like, here's the thing. At the end of the day, D&D is what you make of it, right? So, like, Critical Role. Percy had a gun. That is not high fantasy. That is not medieval fantasy. That's, like... That's nothing... That, I feel like, to me, is a clear example of, like, I don't think it matters at the end of the day. Yeah, the source books are all going to be very high fantasy, going to be going to a very specific thing. But at the end of the day... D&D is giving you the option, Wizards of the Coast is giving you the options of like, hey, if you want this kind of thing and your DM is cool with it, go nuts. I feel like it's a lot of people are getting angry about things that I feel like aren't worth the energy. It's like, it's something that you don't have to, I mean, yes, that's true. But
and welcome to tabletop gaming.
But like, to me, it seems like these are features that you can use, or you could just ignore that they happened, and no one would be the wiser. And I think that's fine. Like, it's cool that they're adding them. They seem kind of interesting. Would I ever actually use them? I don't know. I would have to read them fully, but like, I think it's cool that they've added them. I don't think if people are really getting angry over it, or like the sci-fi my fantasy, like, again, you're creating a story that can craft however you want. I feel like that they're allowed to do that because they're creating an engine that you can use for it.
And see, I've got multiple levels of this. So I got to the home game aspect, the organized play aspect, and then my personal aspect. So for my home game, I'm going to craft my home game based on, if I'm doing a homebrew, whatever my type of game me and my players decided on slot 0. And so if I know they're not cool with the psychic stuff, I'm not going to put the psychic stuff in it. Organized play, if it becomes a thing where it gets released from Wizards in a book format and it's available, I'm going to support it. Why? Because it's there. If you want to play that, that's cool. We're going to have adventures that are going to highlight that. Why? Because they're going to write adventures that are going to highlight that. That's how it works. You release something new, you get something new for that next season. Personally, I like the idea of having the options. I grew up watching like the precursor to the Tomorrow People. I forget what that was actually called back in the 80s. It was like a British sci-fi show where they had watches that allowed them to teleport. I don't know why the watch had to go, focus their psychic powers to do so, but that's how it worked. So I think it's cool that they're offering it. And if we start saying you can't do it, that's a dangerous direction to go. Because if we start saying you can't do it because it's not, right, because psionics don't exist here, then do we start saying, okay, well then female characters can't do this. Characters of different orientations can't do this. We've just now started to see how Wizards is writing in non-gendered characters, same-sex couples in their modules and whatnot. The reality is that representation matters. We've got more people of color, we've got more women, we've got more LGBTQ authors, and it's giving us excellent stories, and they're solid stories. If we start saying we can't have psychics because it's not fantasy, then that's the next step. And I've seen it happen in sci-fi and fantasy books, novels, comics, and I'd rather
fandoms.
And fandoms, yes.
I would
rather see I would rather see it all happening than to have us eliminate something.
So really quickly, remember how I mentioned we were missing one of our guests? She has appeared.
We got a player.
Jax, you're here! Yay!
I'm so sorry. I put Mountain Standard Time instead of Central.
Time zones suck. Time zones are the worst.
So here's an interesting story before Jax introduces herself. I was running a game for a charity event online, and we had people from all over the world. One of my players was also Australian.
God!
Which is literally opposite side of the world. If you guys are familiar with the Dale Kingsmill, She's done a few things with Matt Colville. She's amazing. She's a wonderful person. Anyway, so Dale was, I was trying to figure out where everyone was, because I had a couple of Americans, I had at least one European, and then I had Dale. And what I do when I make stuff is I will go, okay, this is Central Time, because that's where I am, and then I will find out everyone's time zone normally, and say, oh, it'll be this time for you, or it'll be this time for you. And so I had to look up the time zones in Australia. They have half an hour to time zones in one subdivision. I can't remember what they could call them.
It's like, I don't know either, but ZU's very own Cody Davies is in one of those time zones.
Yep. And the best part,
And
only
it sucks.
parts of the country observes the daylight savings time.
It's so dumb.
And so at one point, like there, I think Australia is in, I think normally is in the 3 or 4 time zones. But during the daylight savings time, they go into like 6 or 7 time zones, depending on whether you're in one of these half-hour ones and whether you're doing the daylight saving. Like, it's nuts.
Explain to me why it's arbitrary for no reason. Why is that a thing? Who came up with that shit?
Right?
Time zone, daylight savings was created for farmers.
Yeah, so I remember
but it
the
no
whole.
longer applies.
That was actually a myth. It actually was created for shopping, because people buy more during the daylight. Like, farmers can work during, and they do all the time. They can work in the dark, but you shop less during periods of time where there's less light.
You know, I come from farmer families, and they never disputed that. So,
see, and that's
They
again,
do
growing
not.
up in Wisconsin,
That doesn't.
that was I was
That
told
doesn't
for
explain.
the
That does not
decades.
explain anybody in New Jersey, for the record. But
I know nowadays there is a large benefit to businesses that require in-person traffic, because again, you buy more during the daylight hours. So shifting it so that you are open more during daylight hours is advantageous.
okay.
I know Casa de Zombie doesn't even agree on whether or not we observe daylight savings time, because my dog does not believe in that bullshit. Like, all right, it's breakfast time, and she is insistent. Let me tell you, for a 23-pound dog, she gives me CPR like she is a Russian EMT. It's just and then she'll just like stare at me from like 2 inches away like a creeper. I'm like, yeah, all right, I'm getting up.
So
Wait till the day she starts talking.
That would be a day.
So we have been joined by the person sitting in our player chair. This is the amazing Chax. Chax, if you want to really briefly kind of introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Chax. I'm a streamer on Twitch. I do a lot of Twitch things, but mainly the best part about what I do is on Saturdays, bi-weekly, I'm a part of Jody's and Alex's Realms of the Wild. So,
Where she attempts to flirt with literally every character.
where I do flirt with every character.
no
Thank
attempt.
you.
No attempt. No, I'm sorry. No attempt. You just do it. And I'm honestly kind of here for it.
So you play a bard, is what I'm hearing.
No. I'm
actually.
actually a thief.
I'm
I
the
will
bard.
steal your hearts.
She's the rogue. Alex is the bard. And Alex doesn't sing, and
I used to.
and
Slightly.
Chax has gotten
It does.
conflicts by flirting, and she's only been a player for like a couple months now.
Like 3 games in, 4 games in.
Yeah,
It's honestly been quite entertaining. I
but
love
she
it.
does sell
Fabulous.
herself. She's slightly short because her Twitch streams, streams are amazing. And she does good gameplay stuff too. And just recently finished saving all the cabbages.
Yes, all the cabbages in Ori. I finally got them. I'm on Will-O-the-Wisp now. I also make bow ties, so
Is that a Slytherin
I just
bow tie?
made this bow tie. It's not Slytherin, but it is Hogwarts.
I love it.
Thank you. I just finished it. I was making it while I was waiting for it to start. So I've been sitting here.
So you've been sitting there crafting a bow tie while we're wondering where you are?
Yes.
I love it.
That's so nerdy, and I'm here for it. But also, God damn it, time zones.
Just because the conversation is slightly starting to wind down about this to the topic, let's bring it up to Chax, who has assured me that she is incredibly knowledgeable about this subject.
As she looks, she's like, "What?"
Wait, are we still talking about Star Wars? Because we've got a
we haven't gotten there yet.
Started
okay,
Star Wars.
Then that's where I'm incredibly knowledgeable.
Well, we're talking about psionics in D&D, which is psychic powers.
Psychic, right?
So do you have an opinion on psionics in D&D in general, or the new psionic stuff they've been introducing through Unearthed Arcana?
I haven't seen anything recently of it. I remember when I first learned to play D&D, and my mom was my DM, we used her book, and originally in her first group, they did have a seer, and that wasn't as fun because there was a lot of basically plot holes that she was able to exploit, and so she ended up changing classes. But in general, I'm not up to date on anything current, so I'm sorry.
That's perfectly fine. We were kind of discussing the overall idea of psionics in D&D in general. Like, one of the conversations we just had was the idea that, at least in the D&D community, there are quite a few people that push back on the idea of psionics being added because it's not for the fantasy, or
right? It's
more
sci-fi
setting,
right?
So yeah, without getting too much into, well, Joe said this, and do you have any opinions on that before we kind of switch into our next topic?
I kind of agree with that. That it doesn't really fit the realm of D&D, at least from what I'm familiar with. But I mean, fantasy is technically everything. So anything that's not realistic. So, and telekinesis and such is not realistic. So I can easily see it being incorporated into it. Now, joining a group with it is probably a different story. But
I think it just depends on the group too.
I don't know. I can see it being exploited way too easily.
Well, and that's kind of the idea behind more the design elements, rather than just psychics in general. Like I've seen over the years, I've seen psionic elements that were underpowered, where it really wasn't worth having a psionic character in the party because everyone else could do what they could do better. And I've seen ones where it's been super overpowered, where having a mystic or a seer or something would basically force the DMs to create two battles, or two situations for each battle. One that the psionic character had to deal with, and then something for the rest of the party, because this is psionic character, which is bulldoze this is stuff. So I think that's more of the design element more than psionics in general being broken. But that's just my opinion.
And that's part of the reason why it's in our Unearthed Arcana, so that people can, because like Dave, who's in the chat, just said that him and his group were playtesting it, which is why I kind of suggested this as a topic, because we were having a Zoom coffee hour, because why wouldn't you? I had the day off on Friday. So
why not?
And we were talking about because that's what we were doing at this time. But that's why it's in Unearthed Arcana, to make sure that it balances out more appropriately. But at the same time, we've got Mind Flayers, we've got Githyanki, we've got Githzeri. We've already got psionics rooted into the game. There are still monsters that have got psychic powers rooted into the game or doing psychic damage. There are bards that just do psychic damage with really, really bad puns.
Vicious mockery.
Exactly. So it's already in there. It's just a question of now making it so that there's actually some aspect to it for some of these other classes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a staple. It's a trope within, let's call it speculative fiction versus sci-fi or fantasy. It's speculative fiction. It's
and again, like, it's all optional. Like, you can go with it or you could just ignore it. It's like, that's the other thing too, I feel like, is that it's there if you want it, and if you don't, cool, that's fine. It's like any other rule in the game. It's like, they're there to give you the baseline if you need them. Do you need to abide by all of them? No. I've never used encumbrance. I know that's a rule. I hate encumbrance. I never use it. It's as simple as that, I feel like. So I that's sort of why I'm like, do not fully understand why everyone is so angry about it. But then again, I'm also aware that this is the internet, so I can't say much.
And I have a personal connection to Psionics just because it is a massive part of the lore of the Dark Sun, which was my first campaign setting. I'm always going to be a little bit biased because without the Dark Sun campaign setting can't really exist without some sort of psionics, because magic is massively looked down upon. Gods don't exist. They're either dead or pieced out. And the world is screwed.
And magic literally kills the land around you, and sometimes your other players.
Oops.
Yeah, that's the reason why Dark Sun wasn't introduced in 4th edition until they released the Psionics Handbook.
Because it has to be a part of it, or else you lose most of your casters. Because, well, I was about to say no one wants to be a defiler. No, I have quite a few players that would love to be a defiler. Anyway, so hopefully this gives you a little bit of food for thought on psionics. Like I mentioned, the most recent Unearthed Arcana has 3 new psionics subclasses. You can check them out there if you want to see kind of where the conversation around psionics in 5th edition is starting to lead. Beyond that, though, like I said at the beginning, there are kind of 2 camps in RPGs. There is the D&D and everything else. And for our everything else to the topic, I think it was Joe brought it up in our group chat before, while we were organizing. The idea of RPG Kickstarters. I'm going to assume most people know what Kickstarter is because it has become a phenomenon. The idea of crowdsourcing has given us some amazing things, and then it's given us the Ouya.
Yep.
So it's kind of been a bit of a double-edged sword, because there have been massive scams that have come out of crowdfunding, and there have been amazing successes that have come out of crowdfunding. And over the past, I want to say it's only been really big in the past like 2 or 3 years now. RPG Kickstarters have been getting massive. You can't, if you're in the kind of the tabletop RPG community anywhere, whether it's to Twitter or Reddit or Facebook, you will probably see a new RPG Kickstarter advertised or to talked about literally at least once a month, if not more so. For everyone here, first of all, have any of you either backed or just had interactions with any of the Kickstarter RPGs?
Oh yeah.
Really?
I have backed. I have. So I backed Dungeons and Doggies because the rogue dog looks like our dog.
Oh,
And
that's amazing.
so my wife, who does not game, told me you got to get that. And I'm like, well, okay, well done. And then
That's
for
adorable.
my home group, this one couple, and they're crazy bird people. They literally have a backpack so that they can take their bird on walks, and so they take their macaws for walks. And so when I saw the bird version for Humblewood come out, I'm just like going, well, I know I got to get that now, because I know that Ian and Andy are going to want to play birds, or at least Ian will.
So really quickly, for those of us unfamiliar, Dungeons and Doggies. It sounds self-explanatory. Is it?
It is, because you play a dog that is a character, and it's got in said Three Fey, a dwarf, and a pizza place. One of my players has Dungeons and Doggies as well, and it was built into her D&D Beyond, and so she took a feat from Dungeons and Doggies that creates a Lehman's Tiny Hut, but it's literally called like mark your territory or something like that. I'm like, so you're literally walking around in a circle and peeing for 10 minutes until a magical hut appears? I'm like, well, that's going to be awkward if you're in elf form, but yeah, whatever you want to do. But yeah, the little Chihuahua or Fox Terrier is the rogue. It's
so. Did you just to clarify? This is kind of an addendum or add-on.
It's fifth edition.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a fifth edition with some special rules built into it. Humblewood is its own thing. You play birds. I think it is compatible with 5e, so you can play it with Dungeons and Doggies if you really want to.
Birds versus the dogs.
Birds versus dogs.
Doesn't sound too far off of our Zelda game.
I mean, you're not wrong.
The dogs.
But the thing that I actually was thinking is part of the reason why I think it's becoming such an issue. If you look at, so Alex Kammer, the director of Gamehole Con, just produced Sea King's Malice with Frog God Games. So it was with a regular distributor. It was with a regular gaming company, but it was Kickstartered. Why would a regular game company Kickstarter it? Well, because they have to take all their profit and dive it into R&D for the next product. Which means that you're always kind of just one product ahead or one product away from, going under. Kickstartering something, especially if it's looking like it's popular and it's something that is cool and you can get a lot of stretch goals out of it, you can wind up prepaying for your buildup, and then whatever's left over from what you earn from that is pure profit that gets sold in stores, and so then they don't have to worry about the cost of it. So, and Sea King's Malice did amazing, and even got its own little supplement from Beetle and Grimm because of it.
Well, and this is a conversation I was actually having with my therapist, because of course I talk business with the person trying to fix my brain. But the traditional method of financing a project, whether it's building engines or releasing it to tabletop game, is you get investors that give you all this money, because you can't make something without paying the people to design it and getting materials and all that, and then you have to give them all that money back with interest, and so you don't start making actual profit on anything. Generally, in most businesses, you are in the hole for at least a year, if not 3 to 5. Like, you don't start making real profit for forever. With crowdfunding, yes, some of that is going into reward stuff, but this is all money you don't have to give back. So that's a massive benefit for a company to crowdfund instead of looking for investors or investing their own profits in it, like Joe mentioned. So I'm all for it. Like, I like the idea of crowdfunding and Kickstarter. However, the amount of horror stories and scams that I've seen, and not just with RPG products, though I've followed a couple RPGs that really did turn people off to the community as a whole, just because of how poorly they were run. It creates a brand new kind of a barrier to entry for people looking for a new RPG. Is, yeah, there's a lot more out there, but these Kickstarter projects, you can invest a lot of money and get nothing compared to like the next Wizards book that comes out. You're going to get a physical book if you pre-order it. And you already have tons and tons of products that you can look at and go, okay, this is the quality that they make. This is what I can expect. And a lot of these Kickstarters are made by small companies, though, as Joe pointed out, that's not always true anymore. Or, you know, single people that just go, hey, I could make this cool system. I just need my money. And then things go poorly. So now that I've been talking way too long, what do you guys think about how it's affected, like, just the RPG market, or just the people that play with all these new systems, sometimes coming out, so sometimes not.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm not on Kickstarter that much, so like I don't see a lot of that kind of stuff. I did, just as we were talking, I sort of did peruse a little bit of what was out there, and I do find it kind of interesting because it's like, as someone, I've kickstarted a handful of stuff. I kickstarted ukulele. I think I almost kickstarted Mighty Number 9, which was a Kickstarter flop. That one. I don't think I did it, which was probably for the best. I am in the Kudzu ukulele though, which is fun-ish, because that game I think was okay, but the second game actually was a lot better. But I do buy a lot of games, like other tabletop games, on Kickstarter. Not RPGs, but I've gotten like Throw Burrito, Rolf, which were genuinely great games.
With interesting names.
Yeah.
My son got one of those for his birthday. I'm kind of afraid at the fact that there's a burrito throwing somewhere in my house, but you know.
Well, they're plush burritos. So they will be fine as long as they don't hit. As long as someone doesn't throw it at your crotch, which has happened to me.
I'd say that sounds like experience talking.
Yes, because that's something my girlfriend did by accident. But they're both, like, those games are both really, really fun. And I've had decent experience with the tabletop, like buying board games. RPGs is a little bit weirder, but I also look at the ones that are like, that you're definitely fully done. But then again, a lot of them are made by people who are also in the business for a bit. So like Throw Burrito is made by the Exploding Kittens team.
Yeah.
And Rolf was made by Hank Green and the DFTBA team. So like people who've got the means to do that. But I have noticed that for other things too. It's like Wonderful 101, which is a video game that was on the Wii U, made by Platinum Games. They went on Kickstarter. They didn't have to, because apparently Nintendo was willing to just give them the investment money, but they wanted it on all platforms. So they went to Kickstarter and they got funded. So it's interesting people utilizing Kickstarter for that kind of stuff. But in terms of RPGs, I'm still like, I don't know how the quality is. I feel like I don't think there's an issue with people just trying tons of different systems and seeing what they like.
Well, and that kind of brings up another issue that I've seen the very vocal people that are against kickstarting anything, is the idea of larger companies using Kickstarter to fund and new things. Like I've seen a little bit of pushback against the Dwarven Forge. Who are the guys that make the custom minis? Is it Hero Forge?
Gale Force 9?
Yeah. Where they recently kickstarted pre-painted minis,
Yep.
customized but pre-painted minis, which is just a super cool. But they're not a massive company, but they're a relatively profitable company, and traditionally in business, most of your profits would be filtered back and reinvested back into the business to develop the next thing. And now they're not. They're using crowdfunding, and people are kind of getting upset about that because they feel like, well, you don't need the money. You're just trying to make an extra buck off of your audience.
Well, if you remember, it was a while ago. I can't remember how long ago it was, but the actor Zach Braff kickstarted a movie.
Oh yeah. Can't remember what it's called. College students really like it.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, so you take people that don't have access to Hollywood, that are trying to, Kickstarter their independent movie, projects and whatnot. And here you have a celebrity comes in and Kickstarters it. And before that, you weren't seeing a lot of, celebrities or big names Kickstartering things. And now they're taking basically that away from these independents. Now, yeah, the people that were backing this Zach Braff thing weren't going to necessarily back some independent movie, but in essence, you're kind of taking away that that online clout because they have less chance of being seen in that genre now than his does. That's not necessarily what we're finding these days because it all depends on what the product you're presenting is. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people look at it like Studio 66, which, if you're not familiar with them, they started creating tables at Gen Con. I don't know. I've got my badge around here. I was a driver for them the first year they were at Gen Con, 4 or 5 years ago. And they're in Menasha, Wisconsin, like literally so small it is not even actually Green Bay. But they started kickstartering like dice and whatnot, and I've got some of them here. One of the first ones I backed was it's a magic missile dice. It's a standard 4-sided die that counts up from 2 to 5 because math is hard. But he's kickstarted a ton of dice bags and things like that, and it was it's a gamble because if I didn't know the guy, would I have backed that Kickstarter? I don't know. Mm-hmm. But am I backing $25 worth of custom dice? And is that going to break me? If that's going to break me, I shouldn't be backing it anyway, kind of a thing. So I've done that with a few things where it's like Humblewood. I'm like going, well, I know it's a company, but I've never heard of them, but I'll roll the bones on it because it's got birds or, whatever. I go into it like Night of the Living Dead. There's a board game. I'm like, okay, well, it's a Zombicide, guys. I'm pretty sure they're going to put it out if I back it. Little did I know that we were going to have no shipping routes from here to China, but eventually it's going to come out. But
they'll hand deliver it. This is not a big deal,
right? But it's kind of the same thing. If you look at it, and that's how I look at it when I'm looking into these things. It's like, oh, all right, is that something I really want? I've got limited space in my condo. All my con stuff is right here, so I actually don't have a library anymore. All of my books are actually in banker boxes. So do I really want to bring in that product to take up more shelf space in my house? And then what do I think of the people that are running it? So I have to do a little bit of digging. Do I trust that this person's actually going to produce this thing? And if it's a risk, am I willing to risk that amount of money to potentially get that product, or potentially just go, well, shit.
Yep. Checks, Alex, either of you two have opinions on Kickstarter stuff?
I mean, I have a couple of the things, and I've never had an issue to, but it's weird as well, because to go back on the Zach Braff stuff, like Critical Role, they did a Kickstarter for their show, and it's one of the most successful crowdfunding campaigns, I think, period.
It is definitely the most successful in their category.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one before that was Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, and granted, they're doing insane levels of production work, which we're probably not going to see the final product of that for at least another year, because animation is hard, and long and a pain. So, but like, did that? I don't feel like that delegitimized any other person trying to be seen. I think it's just all a matter of what are they doing, what project are they on, cool, how am I different from them? In this case, yeah, because I'm making a game. I think it depends on the context too, but I've bought 3 games. I am not an expert about this, so
one of the arguments I've heard, just to play the devil's advocate, is while I mean, you can make the argument that you know, all the people that were backing Critical Role, the hundreds of the thousand of people that backed, are not going to back another RPG.
They might not.
They were doing it specifically for Critical Role, but there is a subsection of people that backed that specific thing because it was D&D related, that now aren't going to back maybe, you know, someone's small dice Kickstarter, or a smaller, more indie RPG that's coming out. Or
you only have so much money to spread around.
You know, you run out of money eventually.
No, yeah, I think it's all a personal preference of like what they want to do. It's the same thing as like you're in New York, instead of going seeing a small show in like Chelsea, you go see Wicked. It's like the same deal. Like you either go for the big stuff or you go for the smaller stuff. That's like a little bit.
But there's also the known that the smaller show in Chelsea is going to be shown. Like it's still going to happen. Versus in Kickstarter, you can back a smaller guy.
That's the weird thing.
Yeah,
but that may not happen too. It's a bit of a weird thing. I realized that after the fact. I'm like, good point. Yeah, unless you don't get enough tickets and then it gets canceled.
At which point you get refunded.
That is also true.
So I've backed a couple of things on Kickstarter. I tend to back some graphic novels, or a lot of graphic novels. And I've had 2, I think, out of 4 come through. The rest didn't hit goals, so they didn't actually end up, you know, producing any books. I'm still hopeful that one day they're going to get stuff out, but you know, just like you said, it's a gamble. Either they're going to get support and be able to put these things out or not.
Well, and if they don't meet goal, you don't get charged. So
well, and the other kind of the danger that we've seen in quite a few different genres. And I was trying to, because I remember reading about a couple RPGs that where it meets its funding goal, you give them all the money, and then nothing ever materializes, and they just what a lot of people assume is they just take the money and run, which has happened a couple of times, but more often than not, it's someone with no business acumen that doesn't understand the things like payroll to taxes, or business income taxes and stuff like that, where they just went, oh well, I could do this for, you know, for $50,000 I could make this, and then for $50,000 later of suspending things that they never anticipated, they're plumb out of money. They have nothing to give people, and Kickstarter has nothing they're going to do about it, because it was funded, you know, a year and a half or 2 years ago.
Or they have no knowledge of the business that they're trying to get into, and besides just the business end of it, just like what things cost. Like, oh wait, what's the spec rate for an editor for a tabletop RPG? What's the spec rate for an author?
Or oh my God, we have to get an editor?
Yeah. We have to pay somebody to do the cover art?
What?
Can't we just get the pictures online? Everything's for free on the line.
No. You'll just find students to do it for exposure.
Yes.
I was about to say the same thing. Damn it.
I was a photographer. We got that a lot.
I'm a dancer. I have a freaking dance degree. We both got it.
I'm an author. Guess what? You're not
Same
the only
thing.
ones.
Everyone here.
It's
I think everyone
arts.
here has got it.
In
Yeah.
general, we get paid a lot in exposure. I cannot tell you when I was trying to make it in acting, how many breakdowns I looked at for either no pay or gas money.
Yes.
Where
Oh,
yeah.
you just sit there and go, really? Because this is
I've seen those
this is
stipends and stuff like that.
This is a 2-week shooting process that I can't actually make money while you're doing this, and you want me? Sure, no, that's perfect. I love being paid. And the worst thing about it, I don't know if it's as big a deal for photographers, but in order to get paying gigs, you have to have all of these the things listed on your resume that you got paid nothing for.
Yep.
So,
It was the same thing when I modeled, like all the time. 2-hour, 4-hour shoot that's 2.5 hours away. Oh no, you're definitely going to get $150. Then it's like, oh no, wait, the thing that you said exposure only. It's like, I'll give you $20 for gas. It's like, no, that's not what we agreed on. That's not what anything says. But
Let me tell you about convention organizing.
Oh boy.
We want you to volunteer your entire weekend to work to 20 hours, despite the fact that we did to tell you it's only 8.
When I started trying to get other organizers here in town, because we just have too many venues, and they're talking about, like how great it must be to, be an insider. I'm like, first off, A, I'm not an insider. I don't get to go to the cool parties. B, I work 16 to 17 hours a day at the convention. And C, I wind up spending money doing this. So no, I do it because I enjoy it. So if you don't enjoy sitting and watching people play D&D for 12 hours, don't take this gig. You don't want it. But yeah.
For the 3 years, and every year, without mentioning where it was I did it, every year we would bring up the conversation of bringing me on staff so I could actually get paid. Surprisingly, though, that never happened.
What? Wow.
GameholeCon is actually very nice in that aspect. I don't get paid for what I do, but at the same time, Alex is very good about, hey, we need to get this or we need to do this. And so he's like, sure, no problem. And it gets taken care of. And usually if I wind up spending money on anything, he reimburses me at the end of the convention. He's like, just give me a number. But sometimes that can be a little weird. Like when the last, what was it, 2 years? It was the season 7 open. I got a list of wants from Sean Merwin for the open. And it literally included two inflatable T-Rex suits, a Nerf crossbow, targets.
Yes.
And I'm just like, okay, now I think you're just effing with me. And then the last year's came in, and it was like, I need 150 sets of handcuffs. I'm like, what the hell, guys?
And it's
Excuse me?
Interesting to see
right?
Your reaction to this compared to mine from my management background. As soon as I heard the Nerf guns or handcuffs, my first response is liability won't cover that. Like our liability insurance will just quit. They will just end their contract with us.
Our director's a personal injury attorney. I think we're pretty safe.
So yeah, that was Kickstarters. I do have to mention, as far as like personal experiences, I didn't back this particular Kickstarter, which I won't name because the person that ran it is going to come out of this story very, very bad.
It's gonna be fun.
But this particular entertainment personality wanted to do their own thing that I won't get into too many details because it's really easy to figure out who they are. And bad things happen when you badmouth this particular person. And so they collected all this money for this media project, we'll call it. And they got all this money. They created a part of the project, and then ran into issues, which behind the scenes they said it was copyright issues and the things where he used copywritten materials he didn't technically own the copyrights to do. And then I think it was 4 years later, there were all these rewards. It was physical rewards like books and signed photographs and stuff like this that never showed up. And it turned into this massive. It turned into this absolutely massive scam, is what it looked like, because none of the money that this person raised looks like it actually went to what he was raising it for, because the stuff he actually released, he had already produced most of it before the Kickstarter, and it was nuts. Anyway, so enough about good or bad Kickstarters. This stuff. Our last topic, we always try to do a current events topic. And it is May 4th. So May the 4th be with you. I am a huge Star Wars fan. However, I'm not using the hashtag because I read a story somewhere that Disney was trying to like trademark or to do something with the May the 4th be with you hashtag to use in their marketing stuff. I don't know if it was true or not, but I'm not willing to risk it. So I will just say it, and then they can try to sue me later.
I don't think that's the case, because they're also trying to I think they're trying to take the hashtag and be like, hey, all the Star Wars stuff on Disney Plus, go watch. Because
I saw Leonard French do a video on it, who's a copyright attorney that does YouTube videos. And the very brief understanding I got from it is they were basically saying anyone that uses the May the 4th hashtag is giving us the license to use whatever they mention in our advertisement.
Oh, beautiful.
Doesn't everyone do that, though? That doesn't seem like news.
No, not in the least. Technically, you can argue things available.
Anything on the internet can be used for anyone else's stuff.
Oh, no, not at all. Copyrights still exist on the internet. What are you talking about? No, this is seriously. Like, if you take someone's, like, what was it? MXR Plays.
I mean, that's true. I guess you do have to sign out a waiver release thing now that I'm thinking of. Just like, I think my thought of it is, if it's on the internet, it's on the internet. But if you are using it for promotion, I think you still have to sign the thing for it. Yeah, I forgot about that part.
Yeah, they still own copyright. Like, it still exists. It's just most people ignore it.
The reality is do they own the copyright to a hashtag? And there's no
the post related to it.
Well, just the hashtag in itself is not an inventory item. It is not an intellectual property.
Yeah,
it is a social construct, basically. Reason being is I work for a Division A sports team. Let's just say that. Of course, I said what city I live in, so it's pretty easy to figure out which one it is. But
the Canucks, right?
The Canucks, yeah. So we have to deal with a lot of hashtags, and we have to, and because I'm part of the social media team, or the brand management, as it is currently called, part of that is looking at hashtags and what are they being used for. Because believe it or not, there's an underwater hockey team somewhere in Australia. I don't understand how that works, but whatever.
Underwater hockey.
Yep. We
That's
found
not
that at
real.
some point. It was a real thing. It had a web page and every videos.
Oh my god, I have
what?
just seen photos and videos of this. Holy shit.
So-
Excuse
This
me.
is so cool.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know how you would view one of these games, but this looks dope as hell.
It was pretty cool. I will not deny that.
I'm on board.
So we've had to look at, like, if we create a hashtag, okay, well, how is that hashtag? Is that hashtag going to be legible? Is it going to be something that is easy for people to use, or are they going to screw it up when they try and type it in? And is something else using it? And if something else is using it, how bad is that something else?
That's a very good point that I
Yeah.
actually didn't even think about.
There was a huge thing. We'll get to Star Wars in a moment, for folks. I swear.
Really,
Um,
we will.
Do you guys remember what was her name? Susan Boyle.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
She after being on Britain's Got Talent, she released an album, and her management company decided to have a hashtag with the album release, which was Sue's album party. However, if there's no capitalization or anything, it looked more like Sue's anal bum party,
Oh no!
and it just turned
Yes.
into this massive thing.
Oh no!
Capitalization
Oh.
counts. Do not be E.E. Cummings in this situation. Literary humor for you all. Anyway.
Punctuation and capitalization. The Oxford Dictionary will just come for your ass.
Okay, I'm gonna say I got really, really lucky with my wedding photography business. It was called Voir l'amour, which means to see the love.
Oh, it's cute.
Thank you.
That's gonna
Thank
be, if
you.
I ever get married, that's gonna be the hardest part. The hashtag,
Yes,
Hashtag.
yes, that's what we need to worry about.
among other things, but that will be one of them.
So anyways, this is Star Wars has had an interesting relationship to tabletop RPGs. There have been many iterations of Star Wars to tabletop RPGs, and even more video games based on that. Like the Star Wars: The Old Republic was based on the D20 system, Star Wars RPG, which was a version which was based on third edition D&D. They had a open source thing called I think it was the D20 project or
D20 system.
There we go, where anyone could use the bones of the D&D the third edition and add whatever they wanted to it to create their own systems. It's where Pathfinder came from, and that's where along with
Well, and
others.
Star Wars, though, was a Wizards of the Coast property at that point. That version of it was a Wizards of the Coast property. Because they did have so Sean Kelly, who is half of the Gaming and BS podcast, because BS stands for Brett and Sean, the two hosts of that. He back in back in the day, he was that was probably about 17, 18 years ago. He was running a website called grumblingdwarf.com, and basically it was just a place for Wisconsin folks to meet and get together and party and play games and whatnot. And so I got in on a group with him, Peter Lee, who was one of the designers of Lords of Waterdeep back when he was still in Wisconsin. And we were part of a play test for basically the Living Force, which was their version of organized play for the Star Wars game. So that was a lot of fun. We had to sign NDAs for that. That was awesome. But that spawned the dude, how does that work? And my response was, that is the power of the Force, and the failed will save. I broke a module just by waving my hand, and basically, these are not the droids you're looking for. So he has to do what you say. I'm like, you failed to save, so yeah. It's like, damn it.
You don't want us to sell me death sticks. I don't want us to sell you death sticks. You want to go home.
Gotta go home and
Rethink your life. Yeah.
I want to go home and
before
rethink
you
my
go,
life.
you want to give me all your money.
AKA my favorite scene in the entire Star Wars canon. Thank you. Basically, I love Obi-Wan, but anyway.
recently, because I know that one existed. I know there's at least one other that was not Wizards.
It was a D6 version before that. That was that's a good question.
Yeah. It was a while ago, and it was nowhere near the D20 version. Was remarkably popular. Like I said, anyone that's played the SWTOR.
West End Games. There we go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyone that's played Knights of the Old KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic, that the entire system that was built on was that game. It was just a computerized version, just like Baldur's Gate was a second edition to D&D on computers. So that one was really popular. Now they have 3 different core rule books for 3 different games that all work together, but they have something involving scoundrels, where you can play smugglers and bounty hunters. They have one for playing Jedi and Force wielders, and then the third one was about the rebellion, where you could play. They're all like I wanted to get these books, and they're all like $70 or $80 bucks a piece. Like they're expensive books, but they're like 300 to 400 page books each. And they are unlike the D&D where you have Player's Handbook, the DMG Monster Manual. They are all 3 in one. So they are just a full core rulebook. But those have been relatively popular. I know Anna, I think it was Anna Prosser Robinson was in a show, or I guess Anna Prosser now was in a show on Twitch where she played the newest version of it for a while. So on that note, have any other than obviously Joe here has had some experience? Have any of you guys even seen any of these Star Wars RPGs, or have you played KOTOR and are familiar with that?
My girlfriend spent a lot of Knights of the Old Republic. My girlfriend is a massive Star Wars fan, to say the least, and so like Jedi Academy, Knights of the Old Republic, like they're huge fans of that. So I've learned a lot just by sort of being around her family. One of the things I did though growing up, and I was like, at local game stores getting all my D&D stuff, I would read through all the Star Wars RPGs, and they were interesting, to say the least. I don't know if I would ever really jump into them, but one of the things I actually just found recently, because I kind of accidentally got my girlfriend's whole family really into D&D, so like which is great.
As that sentence going further, it's sort of, I kind of accidentally got my girlfriend. What?
No.
What?
Besides that, but I got them into D&D a lot. So I gave my girlfriend's sister the book set that she was super into, and my girlfriend was like, I would love to do one about Star Wars. Cool. I went online, and there's a dude making a Star Wars setting with the SRD from 5th edition, since the 5th edition SRD rules are open source now, or most of them. So I actually put it in our Zoom chat. There is literally a site that has like handbook, like monster manual of like Jedi and scoundrels like Han Solo, and it's kind of cool.
I love the scum and villainy.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, you'd have to for Star Wars.
It's brilliant. The only issue with stuff like that is Disney is just super litigious.
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't gotten taken down yet.
Well, I'm just assuming because it's just not big enough for them to notice yet.
Probably not.
But I will guarantee if it gets any traction, Disney.
Yeah, Disney will come and shut it down.
Desist it, simply because they already have or I don't think did Disney actually made the Scum and Villainy and all the different books. I believe they license it out.
That's a licensing thing.
But the license holder, it is in their best interest to not have to compete with another thing. But I myself, like I think through Humble Bundle once. I have a conversion thing basically for 5e to change everything into Lord of the Rings. And it's really interesting because as much as it uses most of the 5e mechanics, it is a whole different game. And the storytelling aspect is different. How you run a session is different, but it's all based on SRD stuff. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that there's just Star Wars stuff out there. I'm kind of expecting it to magically disappear one day, like AM to 2R, but
So get it while it's hot.
Nintendo.
I mean, we got a remake out of it regardless. So like, it I mean, still not great, but we did get something better out of it. So maybe that's why. I don't know. I don't have an answer because we all know how Disney play. Especially probably now. But I think it's really cool to see because I'm like reading through and it's so fascinating to see the amount of work people have gone through to put Zelda. Hello, wrong show. Star Wars.
On the brain?
I don't know. I haven't played a Zelda game literally in like months. I've been playing Animal Crossing and Final Fantasy VII. So, but you know, even games like Final Fantasy VII, very like that kind of RPG level kind of stuff. Would love to see more out of that too. But like, I think I really love about like this whole thing is that like people are taking that kind of stuff and making it their own, which I really appreciate.
Yeah. Well, and I guess it kind of brings up the idea. Like I have a show on my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/trainer.
Wow, 2 plugs in one show. Look at you.
Oh,
right?
You didn't watch the first episode where the name of the podcast was Plug Me, Baby. Everyone was everyone was plugging everything.
And that
I'm
wasn't
embarrassed for you.
Phrasing.
Who was on that show?
You'll remember. That was the Don Diego.
Well, that's why one.
I'm trying to think of. Anyway, it's on my YouTube channel. Check it out.
You had Dawn. That's all. That's literally all I need to know about the title.
Oh, it was Dawn. It was Ben the Bear and was Elias? No, Elias was last week.
Elias was last week.
Anyway.
Because then after that is when you messaged me being like, "Hey, week 3, yes."
Yeah. I'm just working my way through the Realms cast. Eventually,
I'm not complaining.
Anyway,
Good luck with that.
I do a show on there where I make pop culture characters into Adventure League legal D&D character sheets. And that's kind of, I mean, they're not doing this at Adventures League legal, but that's kind of what's happening with this Star Wars thing where people are translating Star Wars into SRD. So just as you know, a fun talking point, if there was a Star Wars character or character type that you were to translate into the D&D, how would you want to do it? Like, let's do a little bit of the theory crafting here. Anyone?
If I was going to do it, I think that I would take, as we were just talking about in the first section, take that psychic warrior, probably just straight up psychic warrior, maybe split in some vengeance paladin into it, and then go complete and total 100% Mace Windu, so I can have that lightsaber that is purple and has got bad motherfucker written right across the side of it. Because
is that true? Is that actually what happened?
He actually had that written, scribed on the side of his lightsaber.
That is the most on-brand shit I've ever heard.
Jackson.
I know, it's so on-brand. I kind of love it.
I pretty much, if Samuel L. Jackson does anything, I will watch it.
Yeah, same.
You know, the like some of my favorite movies were like The Hitman's Bodyguard, because it's got Deadpool and him. But
Amazing.
uh, so yeah, I think that's where I would go, because when I was in aforementioned version of D20 Star Wars that we were playing in, there were various paths you could go to as a Jedi, like subclasses. And the Jedi weapon master was Mace Windu, and it was literally the battle focused, just barely skirting the dark side, because you ride the wave when you're, a weapon master. And that's the route that I was going, where another friend was going as a pilot, and the other one was going as the investigator. And that guy couldn't roll to save his life, so I don't know why he was investigating anything. But yeah.
Here's my problem. If I ever did a Star Wars thing, I would have a hard time deciding who I'd want to be as. Like, I would love to be a Jedi. At the same time, Mandalorian armor looks cool as hell. But like Mandalorians, they basically be Rangers, essentially.
Yes and no. Yeah. I mean,
Rangers like you, like not the mystical, like magical side of the stuff like that, but like.
Well, see, I'd argue that again, because I've done a lot of characters that are very technologically based, like I did Batman Beyond, who was a cleric druid. But because technology in fantasy worlds is basically like magic is there to technology. You have scientists that study it, who are the wizards. You have those kind of wonderkins that make Facebook. Those are sorcerers. And then you have the guys that are super reliant on technology but don't understand it, who are the warlocks. I would argue if you were going to make a Mandalorian, I would probably go a war mage from Xanathar's wizard, because they can wear medium or heavy armor, I believe. I'd have to look it up again. But for everything from like their blasters, you could reskin
like crossbows,
things like that for that. For flamethrowers, you could
burning hands.
Yeah, but burning hands, and like magic works really well as an alternative for technology. So
yeah,
well, look at the Eberron characters, the Arcanists, I keep screwing up the name of them. The one that is only in Eberron, and people will keep asking.
Artificer.
Artificer, yeah. If you look in the Artificer,
you've
got their version of the gunsmith is one of the artificers, and I saw where somebody took Iron Man and made it an artificer that was this Arbalest character.
Well, in Unearthed Arcana, they made the armored artificer, which is Iron Man. Because you get a magic armor that you can do awesome stuff with, and that is by far the Unearthed Arcana I want to see to turn into an official product most, just because I love.
Just because you want Iron Man.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, they made a Rick and Morty D&D campaign. Jesse could easily team up with wizards and be like, "Hey, Avengers and Star Wars, let's go."
I have a parody campaign that I haven't run in a little while due to health reasons and calendars. But one of the things I did was I turned them into the Revengers, which is legally distinct enough to not infringe upon a copywritten entity. And they used magic items to go save the real Revengers. And these magic items made them look and have some of the abilities of the Revengers. And it was by far one of the most fun sessions I had, because Elias played the Captain America, which I believe he was, I want to say he was Captain Waterdeep.
Picturing Elias with that is just so odd.
So funny because he couldn't roll anything, so he'd be like, "I want to throw my shield and hit this." I'm like, "Sure, roll for me." Be like 2. You hit yourself in the face.
So you're saying Elias rolled normally?
Yeah. And then I had Gil Ramirez was played Iron Man, and I got to play the voice of Jarvis, which was his magic armor's AI. And so every time he did do things, he'd be like, Jarvis, or I can't remember the name I gave him. He's like, well, what's going on? Give me the damage report. Everything is broken, sir. I know that. How long it'll take to fix it? A lot less time if you would stop getting me hit.
Nice.
That's a great clapback. I appreciate that one.
Oh, it was fun. I had so much fun. And Gillis is such a great great sport that he didn't mind that half the time he tried to do something awesome, it would just blow up in his face, and then he'd be mocked by his own armor. It was great.
It's called playing a wild mage.
Yeah.
I actually, when Prince had passed away, I created a Prince Nelson character, a half elf, half Chultan, half elf, and I figured out, okay, I'm either going to play a noble bard, or I'm going to play a wild mage with the entertainer background. It all depends on who shows up at the table. There was already a bard at the table. I'm like, wild mage it is. That's now one of my tier 4 characters. Prince Nelson is a 20th level wild mage. And he had a white lacquer loot that was his treasured possession. It was during season 4, so it was Ravenloft. So he started playing the song, his pinnacle song, "When Ravens Cry." It was a whole thing. And I will say this for the wild mage haters out there, I did not cast a fireball at my feet until I was level 14. And because of the fact that I got to roll twice and choose the roll I wanted, that tells you the other roll was even worse.
I had in my custom game, one of the player characters that died. He rolled in a new one who's a Genasi wild mage. Literally, first roll on the wild magic table, fireball at his feet.
Oh, really?
And for a party of, I think they were level 8 at that point. For a party of level 8 characters, he hit the T-Rex that they were fighting.
Oh, that's good.
But also everybody else.
Yikes.
To steer this back towards Star Wars.
Star Wars, yeah.
Despite the fact that Disney owns Avengers, Disney owns everything at this point.
Except for DC.
Personally welcome our new Disney overlords.
Listen, I've accepted them long ago. Let's be very clear. I was a day negative 3 months subscriber to Disney Plus.
Yeah,
the moment they announced the pricing, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fucking sold. Let's go.
Yeah,
Granted, have I got my?
That didn't, but yeah. And the weird part is the things that I watch on that. I've watched Rogue One a couple times. It's a brilliant movie. To bring it back, this is Star Wars for about 2 seconds, and then I watch things like Heavyweights and Camp Nowhere, because I long for childhood. In times when
I watch a lot of the classic Disney animated because for some reason that helps me stay productive while I'm doing editing stuff. I don't know why, but I do a lot of that, and Mandalorian also just took up so much of my time because Mandalorian's a great show.
That was a really good show. Jax, did you get a chance to watch Mandalorian at all?
No, nope.
Oh.
You should. It's wonderful.
As much as people will. If you're not a Star Wars fan, which through the conversations you and I have already had, I know you haven't caught that bug. The Mandalorian, while it is set in the Star Wars universe,
it's like a spaghetti western.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't go as far as a spaghetti western, but it's a good, just kind of classic western frontier story. And
yeah, I was kind of reading up on it.
Also, Pedro Pascal.
And Gina Carano.
Yeah. And Taika Waititi.
Yeah.
Who
My-
apparently is also being tapped for a Star Wars film.
He's being
Just
tapped.
announced
The
today.
guy's a genius.
Oh no, yeah. If there's anyone that can make Jar Jar actually likable, it would be him.
You know what? That's what we need. Let's get. I can't pronounce his name. Let's get him to be.
Let's
like
get Taika Waititi to rework the Gungans into something that everyone actually likes.
No, get him to be like the writer, like the lead producer on a new Star Wars RPG.
Oh my god. I would
I think
buy
you
it
broke Alex.
immediately.
I was about to say, Alex.
And
did you-
Alex
Listen.
drops offline.
Okay.
Alex has left the chat, going on Amazon buying that now. Nah, I mean, honestly, if he actually ended up being a guest writer for D&D stuff, like, yo, I'd buy that in a minute.
Oh yeah.
Like, his stuff is brilliant. Like, What We Do in the Shadows. So good. Jojo
My
Rabbit, even better.
Favorite thing he's done is still Corn, simply because I just love. Or is that his name? The big rock dude.
Yeah. I don't know what his name was, but the guy in Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah. My favorite character in the Marvel's cinematic universe is simply because I just love how, because they talked to him once about, well, where'd you come up with the voice for this character? He's like, oh, that's a New Zealand bouncer. You will get these just massive, really built guys in New Zealand at bars. They're just like, hey, maybe you don't want to do that. Except I can't do a Kiwi accent. And they're just like these really soft-spoken, but they're built like refrigerators. And it's the weirdest thing because I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with bar culture, but I've had a couple friends that were bouncers, and bouncers in the U.S. are big, at least like wide. Like I've seen quite a few short bouncers, but in general they're big guys and they look mean, and they don't generally say a lot. Like they just. And
Yeah,
it
sounds about
works
right.
really well. So the idea of a bouncer, they're just like, hey, for friend, maybe you shouldn't do that. Okay, I'm gonna have to throw you out of the bar, and then
Proceed to
wasn't
throw
the
them out of the bar.
greatest idea.
I mean,
just
it's
love
pretty
that.
brilliant. It's pretty funny.
So we've ventured away from Star Wars into
I-
into Kiwi bouncers.
You know what? Star Wars was the throughway to it. It's fine. We got
This
it
is
through
the,
Star Wars and Taika Waititi. It's okay.
This is the Roll on the Table podcast. We're not limited by simple things like my
Like-
outline for the show.
Like my outline or the entire interview we did before this to come up with our plans.
Let's be clear. We did cover the topics. Were there other tangents? Yes. But did we cover the topics? Correct.
It's kind of
So
like
I mean,
how when I went to college and that three-quarter page welcome to the school letter that you get when you take your major for the English department at Carroll College in Waukesha, Wisconsin.
oh,
It's about a page and a half long
Which is-
because the head of our English department was just that loquacious that he could not get it down to a half a page like every other school. And
I
he-
Fun
like
mean,
Colonel
about
Sanders.
Carroll, it's not a college anymore.
It's a university.
University.
Yes, that tells you how
Oh,
old I am. It was
Jesus
a
Christ.
college when I went to it.
It was a college when I went to it. I literally had to dropped out the year it changed to a university. Not because it became a university. It was because it was 36 grand a year to go.
Yeah, it was not cheap.
And they canned my
I can
they
relate.
canned my advisor, and a theater degree doesn't actually get you anything. So it wasn't
Yeah.
like I was paying all this money for this super valuable degree.
Right,
Christ
especially from
almighty.
Carroll, because it wasn't very well known for its theater department.
Well, and one of the things to go on another tangent, one of the things I've found about the theater is no one cared where you got your degree from. They cared who you got your degree from, not the college. But my advisor,
The people, your teachers.
yeah, my advisor got me my first agent. Thus far, my only agent. But yeah, like I literally just walked into this agency and said, "Hey, I'll drop his name. He's a nice enough guy. Tom Bruno said I should to talk to you." She goes, "Oh, you know to Tom? How?" I said, "Well, he's my teacher for 2 years, and I've decided to pursue a career in film." So she goes, "Oh, well, that's interesting. So this is your contract. This is how it's going to work." Like there was no audition. There was no nothing. They just signed me.
That's amazing.
And it was a
All
decent,
right.
like the agency I signed was a decently sized agency. It wasn't, I wasn't with Ford or anything like that, but it was. They worked with Ford. Yeah, it really the only reason I went to Carol was for to Tom, and when they canned him. I went, this isn't for me. And I hated college. I hated most of my classes. The only ones I liked were jazz and my acting courses. I hated all the other gen ed bull crap I had to do. And
See, I can pull us back to Star Wars.
Good.
The reason I went to Carroll College was because by the time I graduated high school, I was already an honorary member of a fraternity at Ripon College, where I wanted to go. It was the gamer fraternity. Who my sister's boyfriend at the time was in that fraternity, and I wound up getting into that fraternity. I actually like stayed at that fraternity when I went for my interview, my tour of the campus and everything. So my father did not want me to go there because he had to deal with my sister going there for 4 years. And she was kind of like Tommy Boy. It's like, yeah, people go to college for 7 years. They're called doctors. But so my
or more if you're my dad
or more. So my father decided I needed to go someplace else, and that's why I wound up going to Carroll. How it ties into Star Wars? The LDA fraternity that was in Ripon College. Harrison Ford was the most one of the most famous members of that fraternity. When he went to Ripon College. He dropped out of Ripon College, but he was a member of that fraternity.
They will use his name.
They will use it for clout forever.
Probably.
But being from
till the end of goddamn time.
Who is it? Tony Shalhoub is from Wisconsin.
Shalhoub,
and
yeah.
We
won't
let
he?
anyone forget
Bradley
that.
Whitford.
No.
He's from Wisconsin.
Trying to think, there was another big guy. Tony Shalhoub actually lobbied the governor back when I was in high school, just as a starting, to give tax breaks for filming in Wisconsin, because that's a huge draw to the economy. And then 2000 the recession hit. And the new governor canceled all of those tax breaks instantly, to the point where I auditioned for a film in November, and by the time they were going to announce the cast in December, that was going to feature length of a film, was going to film in Wisconsin, all the tax breaks went away, and the entire film dropped production in less than a month.
Wow.
And they went to, I would guess they went to Georgia or Vancouver, because both of those are much friendlier.
Or New York, I think. I don't know how New York scene is.
No, you film in Wisconsin for outdoor for filming.
Yeah.
And you can't do that in New York. At least not the places you film in New York. You film in New York for New York City.
You film in New Mexico for nothing.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's kind of like the equivalent of the Eastern Bloc, like when the last Highlander movie was filmed there. Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of actors that have been from. I mean, Willem Dafoe is from here.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Jeez, I'm drawing a blank.
Don't even know how to pronounce Kanawak anymore.
Right.
But...
Right, but Tyne Daly's from here. Obviously, Chris Farley and his siblings are from Madison. Mm-hmm. But Jesus,
because you're trapped in your house for how many months? You gotta have entertainment.
Right.
Anyway,
You
but
are
back
your own
to
entertainment.
somehow relating Star Wars to RPGs.
Yes. Wait, there was a point to this.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I've run out of stuff. I really have. I kind of to give you just to go on another to the tangent. I kind of created this podcast to create a kind of like a co-optional podcast for RPGs. And their line that John Bain, rest in peace, unfortunately, used to say is, "Welcome to the co-optional podcast, where we occasionally talk about games." Well, we occasionally talk about our RPGs in the middle of our Marvel rants and things about Star Wars
and things
Wisconsin
about
acting
and art and the art scene and performing arts and all that nonsense.
Anyway, I hope you guys have really enjoyed this because for the life of me, I cannot think of another Star Wars RPG related to the topic.
There's only like 4 of them that exist.
Well, Star Wars
commercially
has shown up in RPGs a lot more than that.
Well, there are more that exist. They're just called Serenity. Oh,
yeah.
Hey.
Which has a I play tested an RPG version of Serenity years ago, and it was
that the one that
so
Weiss,
cool.
Margaret Weiss Productions put out?
It might have been. I literally just was wandering around one of the conventions I was at, and I just kind of saw, oh, this is Fireflies. He says, yeah. And I did talk to the guy running it. And he said the coolest thing about this is you actually play as the crew. Someone plays Mal, and someone plays River, and Simon, and all that. And he said the coolest thing about this is I never have to tell people, well, River would really do this, or Simon. As soon as they get the character they're playing, they will do what Simon would do. Like they just instantly fall into the character because these characters are just so beloved. And I thought that was the coolest part of it, was just the idea that if I'm going to play Mal, I'm going to aim to misbehave. Or if I'm going to play River, I'm going to, tell you I can kill you with my mind. I mean, and that was just so cool. The same thing. Hyper RPG had a Power Rangers RPG that they ran, and one of the things that Malika, the GM, to talk about, who also helped to design the system, was even from the first kind of a play test that they did of it, they never had to tell the players, hey, you're Power Rangers. You need to act like Power Rangers. You should do teamwork. Should be a big deal to you, and building each other. Like if you've ever watched Power Rangers, every season has this same basic plot. Oh, 5 strangers get put together, and then they build each other up, and then they beat the bad guy, and then we find 5 new people.
And then we make the monster grow.
Yeah, I mean, that was what it was. And she mentioned, like, no, we never had to tell people, okay, well, this is how you're a Ranger, this is... And they worked with Saban, who owned Power Rangers at the time. And even their Saban contact didn't have to go, okay, well, this has to fit within our brand. And they didn't have to say, you're not... Power Rangers wouldn't do that according to our branding or anything. They just became Power Rangers. It might have helped they had an actual Power Ranger on the cast, because they had the blue Ninja Steel Ranger playing their Red Ranger, but everyone else was just regular YouTubers. So, So I mean, from an RPG perspective, it is kind of cool when you see people just kind of fall into the roles that are kind of given to them in an RPG. Which might be a topic for the next the episode. But for right now, I'd like to thank my guests, especially the ones that showed up on time.
Oh.
Just kidding.
Time
Love you,
zones.
Jax.
Okay,
Wow.
bye.
Not her fault. Time
If
zones are stupid.
people want to follow any of the stuff that you do create, just because I totally threw her under the bus, let's start with Chax. If people want to see you after this.
Oh, I'm about to stream after this, so come join me.
Hey.
Perfect. Yep. So on Twitch, I'm Chaxmix. On Twitter, I'm Chaxmix. On Instagram, I'm Chaxmix, ChaxMix. And that's about it.
And do you have a plan for what you are streaming tonight, or?
We might be getting more cabbages, so we're trying to rescue the cabbages.
And anyone in chat, because I
more.
can't actually raid her if she's not live. There is the link to her channel, since she'll be going live shortly after we get done with this. Yeah, she's fun. I met her through Twitch Sings, and we've become very good for friends.
Yes.
And she signs too, which is really cool.
And sometimes when I sing,
it's really funny to watch her just randomly. She's sitting there. And then she starts signing, which I can't do anymore. But I can I guess read more signs than I can actually design. So I'll sit there and go, oh, I know what that means.
So he knows I'm cursing the entire time.
Yeah, it's really like she's such a polite, refined young woman. Until she starts reciting, and then everything goes.
And then everything goes downhill.
Yeah, pretty much.
Then it all goes to hell.
Yep.
I had an associate that used to sign, and she had a sign language book, and I just looked up a couple signs to mess with her. She used to sign to me when customers were annoying her, so they wouldn't know what she was saying. But I used to go up to her and just go, name your what was it? Is it favorite? I used to know it was name your favorite carrot. Because carrot is like, this is carrot, but there's an alternate sign for it, which is eating a carrot. So I go, name your favorite carrot. And it was fun.
And it just looks horrible.
Oh my God.
And then, when HR called, I said, I was talking about vegetables. I don't know what you guys.
Oh boy.
People want to find you. Awkward turtle?
Dead awkward turtle.
Oh, that's awkward turtle? Oh.
No, that's dead awkward turtle.
Oh. I feel
betrayed. Brilliant bit he does about sign language, because he has interpreters and all those other things. And he's like, the deaf are a little bit racist when you look at some of the signs they use. Like the British standard sign language sign for Irish is like that, and a lot of people go, no, that's a shamrock in your lapel. He's like, no, is that an Irishman? And yeah, if you look at signs for certain things, like you just sit there and go, wow.
Yeah.
Big old yikes.
Anyway,
so Alex,
what a pivot to me! What a pivot to me! My God. You can find me at Luca_Starks on Twitter and Instagram and Twitch. I should get back to playing Bioshock Infinite at some point. I've been too busy playing Animal Crossing and the Final Fantasy VII remake, which I will probably continue to do. So. Maybe I'll stream that too.
You used to do Ocarina of Time randomizers.
Oh my God, I also do that too. I need to get back into that. My Lord.
I need you, sir.
Yes.
Well, speaking of awkward transitions. Hey, Joe. You can find me on Twitter at @zombie_Joe. On Twitch, I'm the original Zombie Joe, but that is not what I stream under, because I stream under 20 Sides to Every Story, which is owned by Alex Karowski, and I'm just the Tuesday night show in that shenanigans, where I do some homebrew stuff, and every once in a while we do a Inside the Actor Studio style talk show that involves me asking 10 very awkward questions at the end of an interview to RPG people.
Do you go, what is your favorite
I-
swear word?
I literally do.
Yeah.
Because one of my favorite episodes of that was James Lipton going, and here's the question I've been waiting my entire lifetime to ask. Russell Crowe, what's your favorite swear word? And he thought about it for just a moment, very thoughtfully, and then he's like, a proper curse must have form, it must have function, and it must have direction. Fuck me swinging. And that was anyways.
Oh, I missed James Lipton.
Otherwise, you can find me at Gamehole Con, Gary Con, Hero Camp, any of the Cold Iron conventions in the Milwaukee area, because I like to actually play this game once in a while. Crazy talk.
Yeah.
What?
Oh,
People
shocker.
still play this?
People play this game?
What?
And we're also
uh,
friends with the guy
yeah.
that runs all the Cold Iron stuff.
That
Who
too.
is a lovely gentleman.
He is. And a funny true story about shocking people actually play this. About 12 years ago, I'm at work in said athletic department that I work in, and somebody was outside joking, saying, "Yeah, I'm totally bringing D&D back." And I poke my head out and I say, "Why, did it go somewhere?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, you probably still play D&D." I'm like, "No, I don't play D&D. I haven't played that in years." So on my Sunday game at home, I'm sitting with my friends at the table, and I told them this story, and they're like, "What are you talking about? We play D&D every week." I'm like, "No, you all play D&D every week. I dungeon master. This is like a damn job." So, anyways,
Always.
And they appreciate you greatly.
they did actually.
And as always, I'm Trainer Jody. You can find me here on Twitch. Feel free to follow, or if you're really feeling excited, you can subscribe to me, and maybe I will eventually make enough money on Twitch for them to pay me, because they won't pay you until you make a certain amount.
Yeah, it's like $100.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But up to that point, you can follow me here. Like I said, I stream my own campaign here every other Wednesday. I'm currently developing another campaign to run on the alternate Wednesdays, so I'll have the D&D every week here, and then I run games on every other Saturday on Zelda Universe's Twitch channel. It's Zelda Universe TV, right?
Yep.
Twitch.tv
Twitch.tv / Zelda Universe TV.
Check us out there. Both Alex and Chax are players.
Maybe this week? Question mark.
Haven't sent out the email yet, but
So
hopefully
we'll see.
And then I'm fairly active on Twitter, more reading than posting. But if you contact me there, you will definitely hear something from me. And I have a YouTube channel that I've plugged before, youtube.com/TrainerJody. All my previous games are uploaded to that channel. I have multiple D&D shows, everything from D&D Deep Dive, where we kind of go in deep to the mechanics and design choices of classes and stuff, to this show I actually archive right on my YouTube channel. So check out all that stuff. Otherwise, that is all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.
Bye.